The crowded room was buzzing with laughter, chatter, and the usual hum of casual Friday night energy. It wasn't that many people knew each other personally, but the bar had that strange kind of intimacy where strangers somehow felt like friends. She stepped through the doorway, scanning the room briefly, her eyes locking onto a small cluster of people crowded around a high table. Their laughter stopped for a brief moment as they noticed her. She was used to that. People noticing her wasn't new. What was new was how often they immediately underestimated her. She moved with a quiet confidence, her boots clicking lightly against the polished wooden floor. Her jacket was simple, black leather, and nothing about her screamed for attention, except for the tattoo that stretched down her forearm, partially hidden under the cuff of her sleeve. It was intricate, a complex pattern with symbols and words interwoven, but to someone who didn't know better, it looked like just another decorative tattoo. As she walked past, a group of young men snickered, pointing subtly toward her arm. One of them, clearly the loudest of the bunch, leaned toward his friends and said, "Check out the wannabe tough girl over there. Bet she's just trying to look hardcore." Their laughter was quick, almost nervous, as though they were waiting for someone else to add the punchline. She ignored them and ordered a drink at the bar, sliding into the small space with the kind of ease that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you've earned. The men's laughter grew louder as she moved away, their mocking whispers cutting through the background noise. "What's that even supposed to mean?" one of them said, squinting at her arm. "Some kind of cult symbol." She didn't respond. She had heard it all before. People made assumptions based on appearance, tattoos, gender, or sometimes all three combined. But what they didn't know, the truth behind that tattoo, was something that would change the entire room in a heartbeat if revealed. Across the bar, a man in a navy uniform entered quietly. His posture was disciplined, straight-backed, but there was an air of approachability in his calm expression. He moved toward the group of men, who had now settled back into their chairs after momentarily noticing him. Something in the room shifted as he passed by, though they didn't yet understand why. The young men continued their whispers, oblivious to who had just entered. "She probably thinks she's some kind of badass," one of them said, gesturing at the tattoo again. "I mean, it's just ink, right?" The man in uniform approached her table. There was a quiet authority in his movements, the kind of authority that didn't need to be announced, it simply demanded attention. She noticed him immediately and gave a small, respectful nod. "Commander," she said softly. He returned the nod, scanning her tattoo for a moment before his gaze lifted to the group of men who had been mocking her. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but firm. The laughter in the room faltered, replaced by a tension that had everyone pausing mid-sentence. "Would you like to explain why you are disrespecting someone who has earned every mark on that arm?" The room went silent. The men's faces shifted, confusion and a flicker of fear passing through them. They didn't move, didn't speak, not yet. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a record of service, sacrifice, and bravery that these men couldn't comprehend. She took a deep breath and rolled up her sleeve, revealing the full extent of the tattoo. It was more than decorative, it was a chronicle. Names, dates, and symbols etched into her skin told a story of missions, losses, and triumphs that were part of an elite SEAL team operation. Each line represented a life she had sworn to protect, each symbol a mission completed under circumstances most would never survive. The commander saluted her, crisp and precise. "For your courage, dedication, and service," he said simply. The kind of respect in his voice was not the casual recognition of a superior officer, but the deep acknowledgement of someone who had stood shoulder to shoulder with the best, someone who had faced danger and emerged with honor intact. The room froze. Laughter died in midair. Eyes widened. Phones hovered halfway between pockets and cameras. The young men who had been mocking her now seemed small, caught in the harsh light of reality they had ignored. It wasn't just that she was a woman or that she had a tattoo. She was a veteran, an operator, someone who had stared into situations most people couldn't even imagine without flinching. The commander's eyes returned to her briefly before sweeping across the group. "This woman has done more in her life than you'll do in 10 lifetimes, he said, his voice low but resonant, carrying over the soft music in the background. "And she earned every mark on that arm. Show her the respect she deserves." One of the men stammered, trying to form an apology, but it came out as nothing more than a strangled whisper. She didn't need it. The room had already shifted in a way that didn't require words. Respect had been demanded and given, not through intimidation, but through undeniable truth. The commander turned back to her. "You've done well," he said, a faint smile breaking the usual discipline on his face. "Your story is one that deserves to be heard." She nodded, letting the weight of his words sink in. It wasn't about recognition. It never had been, but there was a rare satisfaction in seeing ignorance replaced by understanding. She sipped her drink slowly, letting the room settle into an awkward quiet. Some people whispered among themselves, others just stared. For a moment, it felt surreal. They had laughed at her without knowing her, and now the room recognized the magnitude of the mistake they had made. "You should tell your story," the commander said, leaning slightly closer so only she could hear. "People need to know the sacrifices behind these symbols, behind these marks. They think it's decoration. They don't realize it's history." She smiled faintly. "That's why I wear it," she said. "Not for recognition, but to remind myself, and anyone paying attention, that every line has meaning." The commander nodded, a gesture of mutual understanding between two people who had lived through circumstances that most would never comprehend. "And don't let anyone make you feel small for it. Ever." The young men at the table had gone quiet, their bravado completely shattered. One of them muttered something about respect and left the room without another word. The others lingered awkwardly, unsure whether to apologize or simply vanish into the background. She looked around the room, noticing the subtle change in the atmosphere. People were observing her differently now, some with curiosity, some with admiration. It wasn't about the tattoo itself, but the story behind it, the reality that courage and service often go unnoticed until someone with authority recognizes it. Later, as the night went on, people approached her at the bar, cautiously at first, then with more genuine interest. They asked about the symbols, the designs, the names. And she shared bits of her story, careful not to disclose everything, but enough to give them a glimpse into the life she had led. They listened with awe, some even with tears in their eyes, realizing just how little they knew about the people who serve in the shadows, far from recognition or glory. By the end of the night, she had made quiet impressions on dozens of strangers. They hadn't just laughed at her, they had underestimated her. But she had the satisfaction of knowing that the truth had a way of demanding respect. And the SEAL commander's salute had been the ultimate acknowledgement, not just for her, but for everyone who had earned their scars, their tattoos, and their stories through action rather than words. As she left the bar, the night air was crisp against her face. She walked with the same quiet confidence she had arrived with, but now there was a sense of calm triumph. The tattoo on her arm wasn't just ink, it was history, honor, and a testament to resilience. And tonight, everyone who had doubted her had learned that lesson in a way they would never forget. Back at home, she peeled off her jacket and looked at her tattoo in the mirror. Each line, each symbol, each name, told a story of sacrifice and courage. And she knew, as she always had, that it wasn't for the recognition of strangers, but if they learned to respect it, even for a moment, then maybe the world had taken a small step toward understanding the lives of those who give everything without asking for anything in return. And as a final thought, she smiled to herself, thinking about the YouTube channel she had recently started. "Her world stories," she whispered, running her fingers along the ink. There were stories worth telling, and tonight's had already made its mark. The room may have frozen when the SEAL commander saluted her, but the impact of that recognition would linger far beyond that single moment, echoing in the minds of everyone present, a quiet but unforgettable lesson in respect, courage, and the weight of a story told through ink and honor.